Welcome, everybody, to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man. Tonight, we got to let you in on the fact that Nicole, our co host, will not be here this evening due to unforeseen circumstances and personal issues. We wish her the best. Hopefully, she'll be back next week. Cannot guarantee that, but hopefully. Tonight, we have Odessa, the maven of the chat room, and we have Nos as the co-host for this evening. Our guest is a repeat guest. His name is Alan B. Smith. Got to tell you, he's really interesting. So pay attention, and if you got questions, please put them in the chat room in capital letters so that we can focus on them and bring them up on screen and ask the man himself. So let's get started. My first question for you, Alan, is for the people that really don't know who you are, could you tell them a little bit about your background? I mean, where did you grow up? How did you get into all of this?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much, guys. I love this. It's the same crew as last time, too. So it's just like a continuation of the same conversation. It's awesome. So yeah, my background is I was, I'm from New Jersey originally. Lived in New York, for the better part of the last 20, some years. New York City and New York State. I grew up near the Pine Barrens, right there. So we had Legends of the New Jersey Devil growing up. That was a big part of our life, stomping through the woods, trying to track the Jersey Devil. We would find fire pits and circular structures in the woods that we would sometime attribute to perhaps pagan worship offering and that sort of thing. The Pine Barrens of New Jersey, if anybody remembers, it's one of the earliest X-Files episodes. They did what was supposed to be something like a New Jersey Devil, and it was totally misrepresenting. It was really, really terrible misrepresentation. But there is a kind of even to today, there's kind of a culture, like a subculture out there, and there's very much a ruralness, a separateness to some of the people who live out there in the way they kind of interact with the land and the worldview. There was an M. Night Shyamalan movie, I'm forgetting it now, but there was about a little society that escaped the modern world and didn't tell their children, and they raised them in this kind of like a cult society. And as far as the children were aware, that it was like 1850. They went to abandon the modern lifestyle for all its toxicity and issues and blah 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 blah. And that that kind of idea of being separate amongst the modern world was a feeling that I kind of had, galloping through the woods as a kid, searching for the Jersey Devil and that sort of thing. So that was really that kind of paranormal curiosity was very much, steeped in my childhood experience. And then, of course, being exposed to movies like Harry and the Hendersons was still one of my favorite movies. I love that. Love that movie.
I love that movie. It's
Agreed.
So good.
I like it too.
Yeah.
Very fun.
And then, of course, E.T., which was an interesting. E.T., the first time I saw it, that scene in the cornfield scared the heck out of me as a kid. I remember I got up and ran when E.T. and Elliot are screaming at each other. But then, of course, I came back and watched the movie, and since then it's been my favorite movie. So I think the cool thing about that is it's sort of symbolic of the appreciation for the darker side of life, the fear factor, as well as the love that is somehow a part of that. This underlying element that by exploring those darker sides, exploring the unknown or getting to know the other, which would otherwise seem scary, turns out to be a very evolutionary experience. I think on the individual level. So I grew up, I saw then a UFO at the age of 12 with a friend. And then right after that, the X-Files series came out. And so that really solidified my interest in UFOs in particular. And then, on and off, like interest, picking up books, going to the library, and going on the internet when it was still new in the 90s. And
Yeah, remember that.
and then on and off, kind of I would dip out of the field a little bit and then come back in and dip out and come back in. I went through some struggles in my particularly in my early 20s, which affected me for many years later. And a major part of getting through some of that difficult part of my life, or parts of my life, was watching documentaries on the paranormal, on UFOs, and listening to Coast AM religiously. When Art Bell was still there, and there was Art Bell and George Norrie. That it was always like a place of comfort. I guess, like for some people, they go to church and they get comfort. For me, that was like my comfort. So even when I was like totally screwing up my life, like it was like
Right.
something that was there as a comfort, because it just reminded me that there's so much we don't know, and to make assumptions about our own lives and our own purpose in life is not right. Because how can you assume whether your life has value or not, or whether you're a value to other people or not, if you don't even understand in the first place why why existence even exists.
Right.
And so it's presumptuous to that was a kind of a saving grace in that, at least psychologically, in that part of my mind. And of course, then there's the love of my life and my family, and all those things that were core to helping me keep it together. And then once I finally started getting things together again, then around that same time I was started doing podcasting. And I've been doing this about 8 years as a host for Mystic Lounge and for Coffee and UFOs now too. And yeah, I've been doing some research on ufology and a little bit in the paranormal as well. And I'm writing a writing project that I hope to have published in a few months from now. So that's where we are, up to speed.
Excited.
Yeah.
Very
Okay,
exciting.
one of the things I wanted to bring up this evening was what we left out on the last interview when you were
Mhm.
here. The subject matter that you presented at Pine Bush UFO Festival in upstate New York,
Mhm.
in regards to the paranormal connection with alien abductions, how people are actually being abducted and seeing people that have passed away on board the ships, or the sensitivity to the paranormal created after they've either had a close encounter with a UFO or with an alien abduction.
Mhm.
Can you expound on that?
Yeah, I'll start broadly. So the exploration of that really took root when I was creating a documentary, very homemade documentary called Half Light. And I say that literally because it was during the pandemic. And it was a passion project. I'm not a full-time documentarian. It's only the second documentary that I ever made. And in this documentary, I really couldn't get out very much and do real world interviews. I did a few, but that was an exploration of experiencers, and that was everything from near-death experience, um, paranormal experiences such as ghosts, shadow people, abduction experience, UFO sightings, um, visions of you know manifesting entities of light, all kinds of things. And there's the effect of that. But first, I think the most important thing is to think of, like, why does that happen? Why do we have these experiences? Um,
Right.
and particularly, if I can focus on the UFO contact and those very high strangeness experiences, I do think that there is a kind of priming that's taking place, that rather than coming forward and saying there's a dimension with all these really strange beasts like Bigfoot and shadow people, or Hat Man, or um, the Beast of Bray Road, and all these things. I think that would just be a little too much for an integration of our society. And because I think you open one door, you end up opening all the doors, which would
Yeah,
include the
exactly.
existence of these ET entities, wherever they may be coming from another planet and or another dimension. And I think that it's a slow exposure. Um, it- it's baby steps, and my wife and I were just watching the movie Contact. It's one of our favorites.
Amazing movie.
Yeah, and it's all
Yeah.
about the whole thing is small steps. Like we're not going to, speaking from the extraterrestrial point of view, we're not going to just open the floodgates because there's no way, I don't think, that we would handle it well. But could
Right.
probably handle it. I don't think we'd handle it well. And it's funny, I think that more now than I used to. It doesn't mean I don't believe we should know. I definitely think that we deserve the right to know whether there's all these other civilizations and species and perhaps entities in other dimensions and blah blah blah, like a very complex world beyond our imagining. But the question always comes up, well, religions are adaptive now, and so we will accept if aliens exist, that God could have created another. Okay, and so then people aren't going to freak out because of that's not the problem. The problem is if ETs came forward, landed on the White House lawn or someone else's Capitol somewhere else, and announced themselves, then the question that would follow wouldn't be, oh, are they real? The question that would follow is, do you believe what I believe?
Right.
So everyone's going to want this advanced super civilization to validate their own belief systems. We're humans.
Yeah.
There's no way that's going to change. Look at the world we live in now. People will turn a blind eye, do anything that they can to validate their worldview, even if it's in denial of the facts. And that relates to the book that I'm, working on right now, which is all about the debunkers and hoaxing. Because it's not just religious people that do that. It's not just UFO quote unquote believers that do that.
Right.
It's the quote unquote debunker, the professional debunker who does that. And so now, what if one extremist group, or even a semi extremist or conservative, or whatever word you want to use, asks the aliens, well, do you believe in so and so, our higher power, our whatever,
Right.
and they say no, we don't. In fact, we know for a fact that doesn't exist. Those religious people are not going to accept that.
Right.
They're not just going to go, oh, I guess we're wrong, oh well. And so then now what if you have another group of people that these extraterrestrials validate their worldview? Now you have human species on planet Earth, just as we always had, with two opposing worldviews, and one feels more validated than the other. There's a major risk of serious conflict. So I think that their approach, and imagine if they've been doing this for millennia, with other civilizations or sentient species, there's probably a tradition for going back who knows how long to just slowly, adapt that, help that civilization adapt to these new ideas. I would imagine that they would be much more willing to reveal themselves once we as a society become a much more objective and open-minded society collectively as a whole. I don't think you'll ever get to eliminate, the extremists. I'm sure there'll be some small, tiny percentage of an extremist population who just, refuses to believe in anything else other than what they were taught. But I think we're not quite there yet.
Alan,
Yeah.
we do have a question from the chat from
Oh,
David
sure.
Martin. From David Martin, he says, "How about the control factor in this?"
The control factor from our government or from the
Yes.
ETs?
Both.
Yeah, I think what's happening, the kind of slow disclosure that we're witnessing now, I think that's happening because of us. I don't think that has anything to do with the extraterrestrials. And it's just a guess, of course. It's all, speculation. but I think that's just because it's a generational shift. You know, like I said, like I grew up on ET, right? And the generation before me, you know, grew up on the day the Earth, you know, Earth stood still. And more we're exposed to these ideas, and like, you know, we have more religions now that are just perfectly open to the idea of extraterrestrials. And there's been tons of evidence, and those who actually take the time, which includes some of our representatives in government now, and in the military especially,
Right.
that when they were growing up, they were reading books, they were reading articles on these things, and they saw the red flags of people who are, you know, lambasting experiencers or people who saw things, and going, well, that's, you know, that's an ad hoc argument. You're going after the person. You're not going after. Tell me about it. Prove to me XYZ, and they don't do it. They dance around it. They dance around it. You know, like the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but they would have you think otherwise. And so now you have this whole generation of people that are like, enough. Like we need to know, but let's get. And so what you're seeing here, and you know, people that we've spoken to, we've heard of through the years, have been telling us there are literally factions, which is just another way of people with disagreeing opinions behind the scenes in government and in these, you know, private secret access programs that are one side or this side or that side's going, we need to do this in 5 years, or no, we're not going to do this until, you know, but we capitalize on everything that we have. And then there's people who are like, no, it's going to happen now. And so that's the tension, the back and forth that we see when you think about like Mike Turner, who all of a sudden comes out against the Disclosure Act that Chuck Schumer had put forth.
Right.
Like, everybody agreed, but no, he didn't. Well, he's also in the pocket of the military industrial complex. That's where his funding comes from.
It absolutely does. I would just like to briefly just say they should all wear NASCAR patches as to who supports them and where their money comes from, so we can just see it. Just want to throw that out there. Sorry, but we just need patches on their jackets or something.
That would totally solve the problem.
Yeah. Sorry,
but you know, but that really gets to the point too, that there are people out there that see these things and actually report on them. And at least we have more outlets. We have more educated people now than we did before, because of, you know, podcasts and independent media where you can get that information out. But did CNN cover that? Did CNN go, hey, I've got a story for you. This is a big deal. Chuck Schumer, you know, like,
right.
You know, back this, that, like he's like a traditional old school politician.
Right.
Like, why is he backing this and pushing this through? And oh, by the way, this guy, you know, happens to be funded by Lockheed Martin or whatever, you know. And so, if they did that, that would be a story that would resonate with the public at large. And they're not doing it, you know. Like, they only go so far. They only go so far in coverage of this topic, and you have to wonder if there are people behind the scenes, you know, pulling some threads and having some influence. I mean, like, it's common sense. Lobbying is effective, period. You know, look at our food industry.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Or pharmaceuticals.
Our pharmaceutical industry. Yeah. So we all know it. Like, it's not some grand conspiracy. We know that people with money have influence on information. And so I think you're seeing that tug of war going on behind the scenes, but we have enough. We're getting towards the critical mass. We're so close to that point where there's this many people in the representative class that it's going to spill over and they can't stop it anymore. So I definitely agree with those who are optimistic that a disclosure of the fact that we've, you know, captured some sort of UFO craft or materials, and that yes, we have confirmed, we have this video and that video and this video and that video, that these things are real. within the next few years. Like I totally think that's possible. But I think that what we saw this, end of November, December, the pushback on the Disclosure Act, it just goes to show that it's not going to be this year. Like last year, people were like, in 2 years, we're going to have disclosure. And I was like, I don't know, maybe 10 years, 5 years, because it's never that simple. Like you get momentum, but like any of us who grew up, as a kid in the 80s and 90s, you would see these waves of like a momentum of information sharing and a resonance with the public at large. You would have the occasional government official, like I forget a senator, I think it was senator of New Mexico, who was trying to get some information about the Dulce base and Roswell. And that was like the early mid 90s. You had Clinton and who wanted to know, right? And he couldn't get information about UFOs. So yeah, it's there's moments and times where you start to get a little excited. I mean, a few years ago you had Obama come out on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel's show, and he literally would not say, no, they don't exist.
Right.
He was playing word salad and dancing around it and making jokes, but he wouldn't say.
He's very selective. Yeah.
And none of them have ever said, no, they absolutely don't. Even Trump, none of them have said, no, it absolutely doesn't exist.
Right.
Why are the presidents of the United States just going, nah, that's BS? I looked into it. I know for a fact it doesn't. None of them have said that. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Truth is hidden within what they're saying. We do have a question for you from Second Star Survival. Why would they show themselves in a mass extinction situation, especially when humans will be so afraid and be most violent to easily blame the aliens and attack?
Do you think the aliens would be afraid?
No, the humans would be afraid of the aliens and attack.
Oh, I think it's going to be more like a Hollywood movie, actually. And I think Hollywood will probably get it correct in this regard. Yeah. You'll have a few people that are going to point a shotgun up in the air and shoot, like do something silly. I think most people, and I think you can back this up with the evidence of how individuals react in real time to the paranormal or UFOs. And that's you freeze. You freeze.
Yeah, there are a lot of reported incidents of people shooting at ghosts.
No.
Right. Although Bigfoot has been apparently shot at. But those people are out there looking to shoot a Bigfoot. But it totally overwhelms it's like a cognitive dissonance. Yeah. It's like if we were suddenly picked up and placed into like a video game reality. It would just blow your mind. You wouldn't know what to do with that. And I think that's how most people will react initially. And the positive with that is it gives pause, and it gives time for officials, scientists, people who've been studying this for a long time to react and talk about it. But yeah, there's going to be fear mongers. You're not going to get away from that. But what we're imagining here, we don't even really know what that first contact would be like. Like we don't have no idea. We imagine they'll be hovering in the sky in a ship, or they're going to land in a ship, and someone's going to come out, and you're going to have a shaking of the hands, and we have their concept of first contact. I think is already happening.
Yeah, I think it's already happened in the past, and we see it happening throughout the ages, and it's continuing.
Right.
What do you think, Nas?
I think that if you look back at history, you find that first contact isn't a concept because they were there at the beginning. And as civilization developed with some support from those people and kept moving forward, that relationship was maintained in times of crisis and things like that. They knew what to do. And then we just had belief systems that started moving across the world, and everywhere they went, the celestials stopped showing up, because adopting those belief systems meant committing to a false narrative that dismissed their own relationship with the celestials. So they said, you don't want us here, we're going to leave you. Your tribe's on its own now.
What is your definition of like a celestial? What does that look like?
Well, the term I'm using essentially represents all of the species of the galaxy that have achieved, for lack of a better term, we'll call it enlightenment. Right?
Okay.
It's that when a species achieves enlightenment, then they have that connection to all the life in the universe, right? Because every molecule of you and every molecule of me and everything this planet is composed of and everything in our solar system all used to be part of one singularity the moment before the Big Bang. Everything we are is still one, right? And when they achieve that stage of enlightenment and they find their connection to the universe, then they participate in cultivating younger worlds that are going to face their own challenges to achieve that themselves. And that's why they come. You know, whatever their species, there are those that have evolved beyond the point of needing biological forms, right? But they can insert into biological forms in order to live out life on worlds to nudge the system.
The system is okay. Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. I filter. Filter's the wrong word. I process the world through a different lens now than I ever have. Now, The Matrix came out in 1999, and I loved it. You know, at the time, I was like young. I was doing mushrooms and acid and smoking pot and partying, and I was like, "Yeah, F the world," you know. I see through the BS, and that was great. It was revolutionary in its own right. Now I'm beginning, you know, more maturely and intellectually beginning to view the world through that lens much more so. And so this idea that we came from a singularity, I think that may not really actually be the beginning of the beginnings. I think
no, it's not.
Yeah.
That's just the beginning on this linear time cycle.
Right. And I think that if we were to be living in some kind of enormously incomprehensible simulation of sorts, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, like the video games that we play, like the first person view video game, it's not an apple, those are, you know, silicon computer chips. This is something that's just way more complex that we can't wrap our heads around, at least not yet. But using it as like a general model, I do think that we are in a kind of a simulation, and I think that that's part of the thing. So, like, if aliens make themselves known willingly and just boom, shock us, and then like throw all this, you know, new reality at us, I don't know collectively if we're ready for that all at once.
You have to process.
Oh, it would be enormous. Like, even though I'm sitting here talking about it and I think it's fascinating, I don't know if my brain would be able to handle it, because I can tell you, having done mushrooms, you know, I've had moments where it's like my brain is like, it's like suddenly you kind of see into the other, like the substrate. Yeah. And it's overwhelming. It's like your brain just, it's so much. And that's why I think we have religions like we do, because it all starts with those people who had like those insights and those deep mystical experiences. And they try to like tell it through poetry. They try to tell it the best they can, but you
art.
can never. Art's probably the best way. Music and visual art, is probably way more effective. That's why we need to throw out the dogma, like get rid of the text. You know, like
I agree.
But so that it's a lot to process. And imagine if you just think that you're like, what would people do if they think that they realize that they are part of like kind of a program in a way? I think it scares the heck out of people, because what does that mean about free will? It's not unlike, whether there's a God creator, right? If there's a God creator, made everything on purpose. Did they give us free will or not? Is this part of their plan or not? So, but the positive of looking at it through that lens is anything's possible then. Like, there could be an infinite number of alien beings that exist simply through a creation method that is built into the program. We don't even know it. So, for instance, like the question of, does a tree make a sound in the forest if nobody's there? I think the answer is no, because in the simulation model, or in a computer, when you're a first-person player, right, and you're like moving through the scene,
Nothing happens outside of here.
nothing happens outside the frame.
Nothing's happening. It's all
There's
right here.
information in the hardware. It saves there, but it's not rendered until you pay attention to it. And that's we have
Quantum physics.
Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
Exactly.
Represents that. The double slit experiment. Something I had learned recently with a guest on the show that I was not aware of was there was an experiment with essentially glass, but like on a microscopic level, like standard glass, whatever that is, has like a 4% light reflection ratio, which means like 4% of photons that hit it, bounce back. What the experiment did was, it wasn't spraying light or a bunch of photons in a wide screen. It focused literally on one exact point and went photon after photon at the same exact point. Now, so like we think of a web, right? Like if you throw a bunch of marbles at my fingers right now, and it's like a web, some are going to pass through and some are going to bounce off. We can understand it. That's physics. That's simple. Yeah. But what's happening here is it's like taking a hole and shooting a golf ball through it, a golf ball through it, a golf ball through the hole, and then 4 out of 100 golf balls like literally stop and don't go through the hole and just bounce back.
Yeah.
They're not bounce backing off of anything physical. Right. And so what that suggests is that there's a program. It's like it's programmed. Something else is telling these photons, you are only allowed to go through a certain number of times. And this is real science, and that's why I love this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, but I don't want people to be discouraged by that or scared by that, because again, it goes back to my original idea of, we don't really understand. So don't jump to conclusions. Don't make assumptions.
For sure.
Yeah, it's an abstract idea based on real science, but we don't know for sure. So,
well,
yeah,
they are trying to use the CERN collider to discover whether some of what you're saying is truth or not, by finding different atomic structures, and access. They say access to different realities, but I don't necessarily believe that or subscribe to that theory. But what I'm going to say is they're building a larger collider so they can get the speed up even faster and see what happens. And science is starting to finally discover different realities.
Yeah.
And things of that nature. But I thought the CERN collider actually is doing some of what you're talking about.
Well, that's the thing, is that whenever they do these experiments, it's like the unexpected happens, as well as some of their models have predicted. So both things happen. It's like, oh, this was confirmed, but this is disconfirmed. That didn't work out the way we thought it was going to. What's up with that? Even something like spooky action at a distance, like there's no explanation for it. There's literally no. We don't understand, at least yet, what causes that. And so if you have two particles in different parts of the universe that can be instantly behave the same way, that tells me there's whole another level of physics and reality that's much deeper. And I'm okay with like the multiple reality thing, because like, again, to use like the computer analogy, I can be on the computer playing, this first person, player game. On that same computer, there's like 5 other games on the same computer, and then I can like exit this game and boot up another one. And so maybe in some, this is just philosophical, but maybe in some kind of abstract way that's what's happening. That there are these other parallel realities that don't defy our physics as we understand them. They're not in conflict.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have a question from the chat from Live Light, repeated by Odessa, which was, what was the double split experiment?
Double split experiment it was a physics experiment. I think, wasn't it Niels Bohr the first one to do that?
I believe so.
Yeah. And so on a microscopic level, they have it's like a board, and there are 2 slits in the board, and then they aim a photon gun at this. So it's shooting like individual photons, right? And they're going shoot. And there's 2 different behaviors. One is on the other side behind where these slits in the wall are, the board, you see like a wave pattern. And so there's like 5 lines that are created by the photons that went through these 2 slits. Or there's just 2 lines behind these 2 slits. The difference is the wave function occurs when no one is observing. So literally the act of observing these, quantum-sized particles affects how they behave. I think I got the science. Correct me if I'm wrong, Odessa.
That's it.
Okay.
And the one of the big things that the physicists want to make sure that they don't mention is that this is evidence that consciousness can control the material of the universe itself.
Right.
Because that's without trying. Just the act of human observation is enough to stop the wave that was carrying the photon. That wave ceases to be, so the photon just follows the straight trajectory.
Right, and that's where it supports the rendering idea that the reality only needs to render when it knows it's being observed, and that means like
Right
this
there.
is where the consciousness aspect of this all comes into play too. If we imagine, a reality instead of like a computer, like a consciousness, that you can put a camera there, walk away, like no humans are looking at this thing, right? But somehow the electrons know that there's a camera looking at it. I mean, it's insane.
That was the thing that I think surprised me most when they repeated the experiment later on, is that they put the camera on it to track it and didn't plug it in. And the photons still said, no, we think we're being watched. We're going to go straight.
Yeah. And what I really appreciate, I saw an interview somewhere. I don't know how long ago it was, but it was a Brian Greene, quantum theory physicist. And the way he was talking about the double split experiment was exactly the way we're talking about it like now. And this is a guy who knows the know. He's like, it's freaky. It's not dry science. This is like crazy, freaky stuff. And like, they don't know what to do with it, And I love his brutal honesty about that. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
I agree.
Right. And they're ignoring this whole other field of science, which is metaphysics, right? Because once they realize that even if the camera is not plugged in, the photon's behaving as though it was.
Right.
Well, a person installed that camera, a person with consciousness, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what trace did they leave on it that's influencing the behavior of the photons? They're not looking for what the humans are creating that causes that consciousness that interferes with the photons. They're not looking at the humans. That's the important side of the equation.
Yeah. I've had the pleasure of interviewing some scientists from IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And they, do these consciousness experiments that preliminary studies are really impressive, that intention can affect objects. You can affect the mood of a room and people in it. It's really, but the thing is, when it gets more complex, it seems to be the consciousness effect is more subtle. It's not simplistic. It's not like the observer effect on these little tiny electrons. Well, it's just one tiny, that's like almost, as microscopic as you can get. And so, yeah, they behave, but then once you get more complex, just like in reality, the more complex your life becomes, the less simple things are. So you can only affect so much change when there's so many more factors involved.
Yeah.
So I guess that means that some people who have psychic abilities, like y'all, that you're able to affect reality in a sense. But the question is, how far can that go? How far can we develop that?
Well, I would ask a bigger question on that is how harmful is it when you can convince the population to adopt unhealthy beliefs that then take reality?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
sure.
yeah. What if you got everybody to believe that, telekinesis is possible? If everyone really believed that collective
Then it
consciousness,
is.
then maybe we'd
I
be
believe
more
in
effective.
fairies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Back to Peter Pan. I believe
Yeah.
in fairies. Yeah.
Oh, Robin Williams, I miss you.
I agree. Man, kills me.
And that's kind of where that cognitive dissonance comes in when people have a profound paranormal experience or encounter situation, is that that's something that doesn't fit their internal agreed upon limits of reality.
Right. And
that's the schism.
Yeah. Well, that kind of connects to the question from Live Light I saw you guys put up on screen, that can we affect reality unconsciously? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Just think about how within our own brain, our subconscious is really the dominant force, is our subconscious.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not our conscious mind. It's the conscious mind you can learn to kind of guide and shape your subconscious. So that's where the forward consciousness comes into play, where you can actually change your reality, but you have to do work to do that, right? But the subconscious mind, it's like when you have a habit and you just can't stop, and you're like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I? That's your subconscious mind. It's that powerful. It's affecting your immediate reality without you wanting it to, without having any control. PTSD is an example of that in the worst case scenario. So if we think that the conscious mind is able to affect reality, then certainly the subconscious is. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to mention this. I wonder when to say shout out to today's first 5 fans of UFO Man Live: Timoth Man, Live Light, Snoopson 100, Rebel Tiger 7, and the Gorilla Gamer. Thank you for showing up early to our show. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much. We love it.
Awesome sauce.
I did see a question earlier. Someone asked about if Canada, I think, would disclose or something along those lines.
Right.
I think that's actually quite possible. There was the memo from Wilbert Smith, Canadian engineer. What was it, like 48, 49, 50, something like that? That essentially confirmed that the U.S. was secretively looking into UFOs and extraterrestrials. So Canada's known about this for a long time too, so they could totally spill the beans if they wanted to.
Oh yeah. They've had a lot of their documentation from their UFO research come out lately, and they were like, yeah, we weren't hiding it. No one asked for it.
No one listened. So there you go. We just
That's how it went down.
All Americans were so American centric.
I don't think Canada will disclose because they need the United States to guarantee their security.
Yeah. Oh, hey Tom, how are you?
Hey Tom.
So what do you think? Do you guys think that Canada would beat us to it?
I don't
I
think
actually,
Canada would risk upsetting the U.S. by
Yeah.
disclosing. I think Canada understands that the U.S. is taking the lead on that.
Mm-hmm.
And what would
I
Canada
got,
gain by breaking it first, right?
well, I
Oh, the
got to
nice
say,
guys, we told you the truth again. Yeah.
They do. That's the
actually,
thing they do.
I actually got to add this. We interviewed Ryan Stacy from Tessa.
Mhm.
He came back on for a second interview, and he actually said that there is a 2024 release of documents in regards to UFOs and their reality within the Canadian airspace.
Mm-hmm.
So whether
Yeah.
that is full disclosure or not, that's partial.
For sure.
Right. I mean, yeah. Hey, Tom. Yeah, I'll see you in Pine Bush this year. If anybody is in the New York tri-state area, definitely come out to the Pine Bush UFO Fair. It's an awesome event. Yeah, I think that technically we have disclosure, really.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually just read the documents that are out
If
there.
anybody does, they wait for the media to say what they're supposed to believe.
And I think that we've been conditioned that way.
Mm-hmm.
On occasion, the general public, finally stands up for itself on that one issue or a particular issue. But for the most part, they're just waiting for confirmation of whatever. Like, is eating too much meat bad for me? Dear government, please tell me. Rather than just doing their own research.
Yeah.
They want the FDA to tell them what to believe, or and whether that's they really trust, or they just decide, I just don't have time, to look into this matter and that matter. I'm not sure what it is, but we certainly acquiesce to the authorities.
In quotation marks.
Exactly.
Oh, you mean the
authority.
continuing rhetoric? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
not-
it's all out there. It really is. I mean, if we go back to gosh, what was it, 1947 September memo? My gosh, his name is slipping me now. That essentially confirmed that we were studying UFOs. This is before the Wilbert Smith memo. Oh my gosh, Tim, who was the general? I'm thinking of. It was September. The date of the memo was September, I think, 13th of 1947. So it was only a couple of months after the Roswell crash. And it said that UFOs are real, not fictitious.
Yeah, I know who he is, but I can't tell you his
The
name.
name's slipping me right now. But like that, right from the very beginning, we've had these documents.
Yeah.
That have affirmed that these things are real.
Yeah, totally redacted, but confirmation nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had tons of people before they passed, give their testimony in regards to that.
Yep.
So I think we have a lot of documentation. We have a lot of video footage from the time before digital manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
We also have photographs before the time of digital manipulation. So that stuff should be brought to the forefront for these people in Congress that are studying it. But no, not so far from what I understand. But then again, I could be wrong because I don't speak to Congress. But what I'm going to say is, you were mentioning earlier, Alan, something about the drip theory of disclosure, how they're trying to prepare us. I've always felt that the reason why the US government will never come out besides profit and control is because perhaps there's something that we shouldn't know that is so traumatic that they don't want to release the information because of the chaos it will cause.
Right, but what would the government know that's so traumatic?
Well,
Unless they
maybe
were, yeah.
maybe our perception of what ETs are
Mm-hmm.
is, dictated by movies, like you said earlier,
Mhm.
and not necessarily the truth. And if they are interdimensional or different reality originated beings, if they truly are coming here, then perhaps their agenda is known, and it might not necessarily be a positive one.
Yeah. When I was interviewing Dr. Bob Davis and Gary Nolan, Gary had, said something like, well, we were talking about whether these beings are interdimensional or not. And the assumption is always they're superior to us. And then he said, what if we're superior to them? And it was kind of just like an aside, like a throwaway, but it was more of a thought experiment. Like we don't know even how to think about these things. So maybe we're like a emotional intelligence species, to a degree. We have emotional intelligence, and they don't at all. They can't connect to emotion in the way that we do. Not necessarily an android, but just a totally different mindset. And that's why.
Right.
But I think we have been primed or exposed, to those ideas through science fiction. And if you think about pop culture, Star Trek has, I think, done a pretty good job of that. Coming in contact with some nebulous thing out in the middle of space,
Right.
and having no understanding how to even communicate with it or understand its motivation. So yeah, I think that's I don't know. I guess I don't find that scary in and of itself.
Right.
But I think that does kind of run parallel with, what if we are in some kind of like simulation reality? That would, I guess, that would freak people out because you just wouldn't know what to do with it. Yeah.
Right. Odessa, you have
Yes. I have the calm. Wow. We've talked about so many things. I've been sitting over here nodding so much. I feel like I'm a bobblehead and about to get a headache. I very much enjoyed listening, and I do always split my attention to make sure that we're covering everything that's in the chat.
Mhm.
And I think as people were asking things, you had a tendency to just kind of cover them naturally, so didn't have to really get too into direct questions. I think it's just the conversation has just kind of flowed. Thank you so much for actually touching on the connection between the metaphysical experience and the alien experience, at least a little bit. That was very nice. I do appreciate that. I know we were very much looking forward to that last time we got to talk. So thank you for that. Really glad you're here again. And as far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to come anytime and just hang out.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have a question that we haven't addressed. Well, we kind of have, but I want to get more into it. What do you think the connection is between, say, the legendary Bigfoot and UFO encounters? A lot of people have reported seeing Bigfoot in the vicinity of a UFO sighting.
Mhm.
So why do you think that is? Do you think that is curiosity on the part of the upright bipedal ape? Or do you believe it's because of something other?
First, I just want to say, just popped into my head. Nathan Twining, that memo. That's the memo, 1947.
Yes.
Anyway, so I actually have to do a little thing on Bigfoot soon. So I've been kind of thinking about this. I'm not afraid. I don't shy away from speculation. I'm working with some people on a separate little project where, I'm the skeptical one, in the project, and I enjoy it because I think you can totally keep a critical and skeptical mindset and also be completely open to speculation.
Right.
And so for the Bigfoot thing, there is an issue of not finding enough evidence of hair. Like, let's be honest. If you have like a 7
Shed.
to 9 foot, beasts, roaming the woods, and they are just purely biological, even if they're like the most amazing at hiding. I just bought a T-shirt. Like world champion hide and seek world
Yeah,
champion. Yeah.
yeah.
Nature.
I love that.
Nature.
I love that. Yeah. But come on, how do we not have some more hair samples? We've had some, a couple of interesting tests that have gone out, but nothing really conclusive. That I do struggle with that. Even nails, like how do if they're hominid like, do their nails grow out? Do they chew on them and peel them off and split them? Like humans used to do
Right.
before we had nail clippers. I do struggle with this. So that leaves me with the speculative alternative, which is maybe Bigfoot really does fall in the paranormal. And yes, sure, maybe they can manifest physically in a way where you do get a foot imprint here. And the interesting thing about that is, how often do we hear about Bigfoot stories where it's like 1 or 2 footprints and then there's nothing else? What's up with that?
Often.
Right.
Yeah.
So okay, that supports the idea that maybe something is kind of just manifesting there. I'm inclined to be open to that idea. Yeah, right. So, yeah, I mean, obviously, when you lack evidence, you have to come up with some ideas to explain things away, and that's all that is. It really is. I'm just trying to find a way to explain their existence, but I believe they exist. So,
if people are seeing them in and around UFO sightings, within maybe not the same day, but a couple days later or whatever, they're right in the area where a major sighting was.
Yeah.
Why? My idea is, whether they exist or not, whether we know what they are or not, what would be the reason for them to be in the vicinity of a UFO sighting? Unless, of course, they're off-world non-human intelligence. Hey, Nos, go ahead, Nos.
Yeah, go ahead, Nos.
Okay.
Yeah.
So continuing with kind of what we were talking about earlier, celestials cultivating life on the planet doesn't mean humans are the end-all be-all.
What?
Right.
They're the pinnacle of evolution, or the only life on the planet the celestials care about.
Right.
They told the humans to take care of the rest of it, which means they care about the other million species.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got your Sasquatch, you've got your giants, you got your merfolk, you got your fae. You've got a lot of things out there that are in all the old lore that didn't get destroyed.
Right.
That are all across the world. Well, they haven't decided to reject their celestial parents and say, we don't need your help. We can make it on our own. Right. So the other species that are out there, they still get the check-ins from the celestial, parents saying, okay, well, the humans are encroaching too close on this territory with their real estate developments.
Right.
Let's go ahead and relocate your family to another cave network.
Right. Which is, I think, not impossible. I think that there could be some creatures that could do that. I just don't know if that's the Bigfoot, because like I said, if you rely on the reports, these things often smell, which means they're a biological sweating, bacteria infested being like we all are. And, but they've just got a lot more hair, and which increases the odds. I mean, as a regular human with like a regular hair,
we shed a lot.
Right.
We do. Yeah. I mean, that's how you catch people at crime scenes, right? You can find hair follicles.
I want to help you get comfortable, a little bit more comfortable with accepting the greater probability of them having biological presence.
Okay.
Because like here in the United States, about 1 million deer die in the wild every year. Are you stumbling across a lot of deer skeletons yourself?
Oh, no.
Is that happening every day? Right?
No.
And that's a major population animal.
Sure.
Not an endangered species population. So when you think about the volume of
That's a good point.
wildlife that's
Mhm.
out there in the wilds, and your likeliness of coming across anything, if you come across a tuft of fur on a path, you're not taking that to a genetics lab to get it tested. You're saying, oh, a wolf or a coyote went through here and got its fur caught on a branch.
Right.
No one's grabbing up all of that random stuff that could be from the Sasquatch family.
True, except the Sasquatch researchers and investigators do that. They try to do that. You know, they do pluck
They
here
try
and
to do
stuff,
that. Yeah.
But is it enough? Like statistically speaking, like you're saying, like
Right. Yeah.
if it's
that's
such a
point.
small population of a breed, it's like bears, right? Like when do you ever walk through the woods and see a dead bear?
Yeah.
You know, you don't. So yeah, you can't rule it out that it's biological. I mean, we do have precedent for, you know, hominid cousins of ours, you know, like Gigantopithecus, Homo naledi, and other beings that are built differently than us, but you know, bipedal, and intelligent. So yeah, sure, it's certainly not impossible, but it's the other aspects, like the idea, like you have these random footprints. Like it's hard for me to go, unless they're really good leapers, you know, and like, but again, like I'm not ruling it out, but I'm just looking at the totality of the evidence, like, which is also, there is an association with reports and lights in the sky. I'm not necessarily like a UFO, more like an unidentified anomaly or something like that. And it, you know, we see that with crop circles too, or cattle mutilations. There'll be, you know, orbs or UFOs and stuff in the sky associated with the event. So there's a connection there, which to me just helps support the theory that maybe they are otherworldly, meaning whether they're interdimensional, they're coming from another gaming program and just popping into our game for a little bit, or they're aliens, like another form of aliens, and they just have a different modus operandi. Like they don't go and abduct people like the Greys and that sort of thing. So I don't know, but I think that there's definitely more than enough anecdotal evidence to suggest that there's a real phenomenon, and that there's some kind of, you know, Sasquatch being out there. Yeah.
We have people in the chat from all over. We just had somebody check in, a friend of mine from Liverpool, England.
Hey,
so
how are you?
welcome to Qvid.
Hey, Cuban.
Hey, Cuban.
We have a lot of questions now. I have to scroll up here because there was a question that I wanted to ask you. That someone had asked earlier, but okay. Do humans have potential for hive mind or collective consciousness? What do you think? Anyone?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think some.
Mm-hmm.
I think some no. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, that's what the
ego, id, personality can get in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the potential I think is there.
I think transhumanists are trying to get us there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's go around the panel and take some last comments. So, Alan, what would you like to add as a last statement for tonight?
Oh, last statement. All right. I would say that I won't say the word duty, although some might, but I think that we have some sort of obligation as people who have experienced and or researched
Moral
these
imperative.
topics. Yeah, a moral imperative to do what we can to help, you know, spread the word about this topic in a way that is digestible and that counters the ongoing efforts of the innocent naive skeptic, and the malintended debunker. The amount of damage that they do with their efforts is astonishing. I had interviewed Mike Rogers shortly after that whole hoax debacle occurred, where these debunkers came out left and right, and it was a coordinated effort. It was so clear. It wasn't just people trolling, and like you see, it was a coordinated. And in the comment section on my own channel and on other people's podcasts that were interviewing the people associated with this, the number of people that were just like, "Oh my gosh, I guess it was a hoax." Like they just gave up. They were like, they were so overwhelmed by the tactics, left, right, and it was just one after the other, and they conflate and confuse, and it becomes overwhelming. My gosh, if you're a journalist working for the Washington Post, there's no way you're going to touch that story, because just looking at it scares you. You go, there's just so much, bunk. And so our job is to try to counter that, in the best way that we can, whether that's conversations at home with your family and friends, some coworkers, go out there and chat and share your feelings and your comments. And I think that's important. I retweet things on Twitter that I think are important, or X. Yeah.
Where can people find you, Alan?
You can find me on youtube.com/mystic lounge. On X, it's at paranormal_now. And on Instagram at paranormal now. I spend more time on Instagram, I think, than anywhere else.
Okay, and you're coming out with a book soon?
Yeah, in months. I'm not sure. not sure exactly when.
Soonish.
I know. I keep kicking the can down a curb, but I'm getting there. Yeah.
Soon, trademark symbol.
Exactly.
Yeah. So don't look on Amazon. It's not there yet.
It's not there, right? Yeah, it's in my head.
But it is. Yeah. It is coming up, and we'll keep you updated. Nos, any last comments?
I completely agree that we need a systematic method for gradually exposing people to the uncomfortable truths of the metaphysical and extraterrestrial worlds.
Well said. Yeah.
And if only there was a divine blueprint for that.
If only there was already something out there. Yeah.
But
Sarcasm. Sorry.
No, it's you look at the way people react, and Gene Roddenberry is being very optimistic with encounters with first encounters with unknown species, because you look at the decline of civilization going on here, on this little planet, and xenophobia exists because someone's name sounds different. That's the level of disconnection that people have just been encouraged to cut themselves off from other people. Right? Divide and conquer is the first rule of warfare. You get everyone afraid of each other, get everyone not to trust each other. And unfortunately for them, the ones that want everyone to not trust each other, that's backfiring on them now. Because the distrust that is inherent across the population means now people are not trusting authority. And they're starting to demand answers. And they're starting to say, wait a second, they've never disclosed anything in the history of the nation. They've been caught by other people disclosing things and then had to fess up. But this government has never admitted to a clandestine operation in its existence.
Right.
So all of this grandstanding that they're doing with people that are government or attached to government saying, hold on there, we're going to give you the truth. It's coming. The U.S. government has full command of all the knowledge. I just can't tell you right now because, NDAs and stuff. But it's coming, which is just a big distraction. Get everyone that was making progress away from the research side of things to get them to begging the government to do a thing it's never done.
Yeah, I agree. There's people have left the research, and that's Gary Nolan had actually X'd, if that's the word, to something about Richard Dolan recently, and I just retweeted it. And I was like, thank you. Let's bring back the research to the conversation. So, and I really appreciate you guys tonight so much.
I just want to jump in and just say thanks for the little bit of science tip. I really enjoyed that so much. Let's talk physics anytime. I'm a fan anytime. That was great. Thank you so much, Alan, for sharing your breadth and width of knowledge with us. and your perspective. It's been invaluable. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank
We
you,
really
guys.
appreciate it. Everybody in the chat loves you, and is glad you were here. And thank everyone in the chat for being here tonight and engaging. I love it. Thank you so much. Keep it up.
Yeah, ditto on what Odessa said. Generally, that's what I say. So, anyways, thanks to everybody who participated online, chatted in the chat room, and engaged with Alan and the panel. I really appreciate it. And I hope you will return next Wednesday when we interview Deborah Jordan Cobble, made famous by the movie Intruders that came out in 1992. If you want to watch it, it is on YouTube, and it is ad-free, so go ahead and watch it. The main character, Deborah Cobble, is portrayed by Mare Winningham. You need to see the movie to understand the situation. So anyways, we'll see you next Wednesday at 9:00 p.m. Eastern. From all of us on the panel, good night.